Sabah everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk to you guys about multitasking on our smartphones. Specifically two devices that I've had an opportunity to spend over a month with. I'm talking about the Surface Duo and of course the Galaxy Z Fold 2. Both of these guys have a folding type of technology. One folds the actual device with two displays on them. The other one actually has a folding device, well, a folding display with an external display. Between the Surface Duo and the Galaxy Z Fold 2, which one of these two will actually give us a better multitasking functionality for productivity? Not only that, how does the LG V60 kind of fit into the mix? I feel like it's kind of like the wild card of all phones. This is TK. Let's go ahead and do a comparison between the Galaxy Z Fold 2 and the Microsoft Surface Duo. Like and subscribe and make sure you hit that bell icon so that you're always notified to whenever we have new videos on the channel. So what I have in front of us is the Galaxy Z Fold 2 from Samsung and the Microsoft Surface Duo. Both of these devices were released in 2020, actually within a month or so from the time of filming this video. And of course, both of them have a slightly different experience when it comes to foldable or multiple display type of a technology. What I mean by this device actually, although actually folds, so you see here there's a folding mechanism here that allows it to go all the way around. Even has pen support, although this is not included in the box. This was actually provided to me as basically a loaner from a buddy of mine, Juan Carlos Bagnell, and I really appreciate that. But he also was kind enough and very gracious enough to allow me to have the Surface Pen, which is something that also makes it very functional. And also you can see here, there's some magnetic options here for it to work. So the overall technology that you have here essentially is a folding display. We have two 5.6-inch displays that when you open it, you have basically an area coverage of about 8.1 inch of display coverage. So the thing is, it's actually two separate displays, and which means essentially you're running it kind of like a desktop experience. I can actually launch multiple applications and they launch in their own virtual way or normal way basically, as opposed to being formatted to fit a certain display size. Now when we switch over to the Galaxy Z Fold 2, we notice that it's a slightly different approach. We have an external display that is actually much bigger than what we've seen in the past. This is basically a 6.3-inch display with a much longer form factor. The other thing though is obviously we can open it up, and when you open it you have the access to basically a 7.6-inch display. Slightly smaller, but it's a single display that goes basically across, or you can obviously readjust it to use the actual UI in whichever format you want. But the experience is pretty much the same. This is a folding display, this is a folding phone with two displays. But when you connect them to a PC, that actually gets a little bit different, and we'll talk about that in a second. No pen input on the Galaxy Z Fold 2. There is rumors that the Z Fold 3 may have a pen input, but this one does not. We have a triple camera setup in the back, a front-facing camera here, as well as a front-facing camera that's present inside. So in total, we have 5 cameras here on the Galaxy Z Fold 2. The Surface Duo gets a slightly different experience. We only have one camera. It's an 11 megapixel camera front-facing right here. And you actually have the ability of changing the experience based on how you're holding it. So right now it's front-facing, but if I close the phone, and I can actually switch it over, so let's go ahead and here, I'll give it a second. It switches over to the actual UI being front-facing. So this is normal camera mode. And of course, if I flip it over to the other side, it becomes front-facing, which essentially is what you'd normally want to do it. It senses it based on the accelerometer. The difference though is that it is a single sensor, and the camera on this so far, I'm not going to say it's the best camera, but for video calls or things like that, this is going to work fine. We have a front-facing dual LED, or the LED light here. The earpiece here is not a speaker. This is right there. You can kind of see it. This is strictly for listening to conversations. There's actually a separate piece right there for the speaker. So the speaker is sitting on the second part of the display. So if you're holding it in a normal landscape experience, you want to be able to enjoy content, I would recommend you using it on the second display, so double tapping it on this end, and using it to watch your video and all of that, because at this point the speaker is facing you. Even though it's mono, it still faces you. Before we go too far, I do want to mention that I will be doing some comparisons between these two and of course the V60, because for me the V60 is kind of like the maverick of all of these guys, because at its core it's a single phone with a large display, but you have a case option that enables you to have a dual display functionality. It's the exact same panel, and you also have pen input if you want to be able to use it. It's not necessary, but it is there. We have stereo speakers, front-facing cameras, multiple cameras in the back, a whole bunch of different things. We have obviously wireless charging, a 5,000 milliampere battery, a headphone jack. That is something that neither one of these guys have. So to round off the actual specifications, just to kind of get those out of the way, we have the Snapdragon 865 here, and that's going to be due to the fact that this actual product took a long time to get developed. So it has nothing to do with the fact that this is not a good processor. It's just that right now 855 with 4G LTE connectivity, so no 5G connectivity on the Surface Duo. Here we have the 865, and of course we have the 5G connectivity with the X55 modem. So a couple of things to keep in mind. If you're looking for 5G and you're looking for multitasking, the Z Fold 2 right now is pretty much where it is. As far as expandable storage, neither one of them supports the expandable storage. This comes with 256 gigs of storage here. This one comes with either 128 or 256, depending on the model that you pick up. And of course, there is no multi-SIM support. Single SIM to single SIM, and of course, you're basically just set. There's a single SIM tray right here. The fingerprint sensor here is in the power button, and it is as it is here, so both of them support the same functionality. The power button, though, is in the same button here, as opposed to having a power button, fingerprint sensor, as well as a volume rocker. The other thing that makes the Z Fold 2 slightly different is that we actually have true stereo speakers that's present on the top and the bottom. There's two speakers here to give us that experience. Obviously, if you have USB-C for data charge and connectivity, that's very much the same experience here. So no headphone jack on either one of them, but when it comes down to actual productivity is where we need to basically start jumping into this. So SD card support, neither one of them supports it, so we cannot expand our storage, but we are obviously able to use other accessories to help. Pen input is only available on the Surface Duo, which is something to keep in mind, and there is no option right now, and also there is no mention, of course, of any maybe unreleased features here with the Z Fold 2. Now, as far as experiencing applications here, there's a few ways of doing so. You can either just keep the phone closed, unlock it, and use the experience the way you have it here. Meaning, I can open it up, go into Instagram. You notice that the formatting is slightly different. You're getting a smaller picture, and of course, you're able to still use it. But if you want to be able to use the full screen, just open it up, and at this point you have full screen access, and you're able to see Instagram in all its glory. And of course, you have the ability of running multiple applications, but not only just two, which is what we typically see, because the Surface Duo can actually run two applications very nicely, two independently. Here, if we want to be able to run multiple applications, so let's go ahead and launch YouTube. And as you can see here, we can run 3 different applications at the same time. My question would be, though, is are they really fully functional or fully usable in this form factor? So in a sense, we can run a full video here, we can resize it, make it a little bit smaller, and of course, it just becomes more of a formatted experience here. Again, on the front-facing display, none of these functions are actually capable. So the main experience here is you can run multiple applications at the same time. And when it comes to the Surface Duo, the experience is slightly different. You notice we don't have an external display. You are able to keep the phone or the actual Surface Duo in the open format. The glass on the inside is the same glass on the outside. The only difference is that on the inside, you have actually displays here to be able to use them. On the outside, it's pretty much just covering. There is no wireless charging or reverse wireless charging. And you can see that the aesthetics, or at least the design, mimics very closely to basically a Surface experience. So opening up, you can turn on the display, and of course you can unlock it using the fingerprint sensor, and you are able to use the pen input and to be able to control it. So this is one of the main benefits here, and that was one of the notifications. The experience of running multiple applications is truly multiple applications. You can see right there, full-size applications, and you're able to also kind of toss them from one side to the other. So I feel like the experience here from a gesture standpoint looks really nice, and it's been optimized to use to full displays. Now, if I, let's say, want to open up Instagram, but I want to be able to use Instagram in a full view, it does switch me over to this more of a form factor. So it's a longer form factor, again, intended to work with more of this, but you definitely still have that little seam in the middle. So that's something to keep in mind. I do want to mention, though, that this seam is actually just because the hardware is requesting it to be this way. If you connect this to any external display using an MHL adapter, you actually get a full desktop. So essentially, this is a full desktop of an Android that is basically configured and made specifically to work correctly here. You can use this obviously with different applications such as Outlook. And what I mean by this essentially is when you're opening a mail applications like this, you can actually see the mail system on the left and of course the email on the right side, making it very nice for multitasking. And if you want to be able to just use it on one display, close the other, it actually turns it on and you're able to experience it here, or flip it over, double tap, and it brings over the experience with it over on this end. 4G LTE here on AT&T is what I've been using it for the last month, and so far connectivity has been pretty good. I get pretty good connections, and of course internet access and all of that, hotspot, all of that good stuff is good. As far as connectivity though, I've been using Bluetooth consistently with both of these devices. I will say though, Juan Carlos did include a very nice package which included the Microsoft keyboard, which is a Bluetooth keyboard that will work with almost any device. This is not specifically made for the Surface Duo, but it works really nice and it's Bluetooth connected, and it easily makes this, actually as far as an experience, very nice and very much like a laptop based experience. And then lastly, included this adapter which enables us to use a headphone jack with the system. At the end of the day, I think this is a very nice package that you're able to augment the Surface Duo that you pretty much can use similar things to it on the Galaxy Z Fold 2 with the exception of the pen. The Z Fold 2 will need an adapter to be able to use it, and of course a keyboard will work on any Android device or iOS that uses Bluetooth for keyboard input. Now, when it comes to working on documents or productivity type stuff, so let's go ahead and open up Docs. So I have this thing. This is just a standard document that I was able to pull up from Google Docs. So you notice first and foremost, the formatting on this is actually pretty bad. If I want to start even editing it, you'll notice is that the keyboard will start coming out. We'll go ahead and open it up. And it just doesn't look the right way. From a sense of working, this is too cramped style. And although functional on a pinch, if you really want to do this quickly, I don't feel like this is something that you definitely want to be able to do all the time. So for the most part, on a Z Fold 2, you're more than likely going to open it up in the standard format, which gives you access to the full display. Again, smaller form factor there. And because of the new flex mode that actually was introduced, you're able to actually open it up sideways, and that gives you the ability of kind of interacting with it slightly different. So overall, I feel like the keyboard should definitely be smaller. The working area would definitely get better. This is, again, just a sample document. And this is where it kind of gets a little bit better as far as the usability when it comes down to using something like this on the Surface Duo. Now, on the Surface Duo, you're able to open it on one side, or of course, you can open it up on the dual side, which gives you access to kind of like more of a bigger display. Now, keep in mind, right now I'm not showing the keyboard. This is not going to obviously be different if you ran it here directly. So if I hide the keyboard, this is pretty much similar experience. And if I go sideways, this is pretty much, again, the same level of detail that you're able to see. Although you can definitely see we have a little bit more margins here because it's an 8.1 inch display as opposed to a 7.6. So those things kind of just expected there. It's just not, I'm not trying to basically sound like you cannot get a big display on the Z Fold 2. It's basically when we start editing, and that's when it gets a little bit fun. So first, you'll notice that there's this version, right? We can actually go back on the right side or the left side. Or we can also use it in more of a PC style experience. So let's go ahead and open it up here. And you'll notice that the keyboard kind of sits on the bottom, and we still have a lot more functional areas to be able to use. And that's because it's using the existing UIs to actually allow it to be more functional. So you could totally put this down and start you basically typing in, doing everything you want to do. And of course, if you want to use your pen input to be able to edit, select, do different things, all of those things will work, and they'll work very nicely. And I think that's one of the main benefits that we have here. It's the flexibility of using it to the level that you want, either one screen, two screen, or running multiple apps, which I think is also one of the best features here. Again, here's Instagram and here's Twitter running on the Surface Duo. And this is how the same experience looks like on the Z Fold 2. Even if I go into more of a landscape area, so you can kind of see it, it definitely still looks more formatted correctly, as is this is two separate displays running it, as opposed to a single display being split between two different apps. Now let's talk about the V60, which I feel like, again, is the wild card between these two. And what I mean by this, the V60 gives us the ability of actually taking the phone out of the case. So this is an accessory that you're able to pick up either directly when you first buy the phone, or you can buy it separately. And this is essentially a second display case that gives us the ability of using an exact same panel like this, exact same panel on a separate device, that you're able to basically run two devices or two displays at the same time. And what we get essentially here is the Snapdragon 865 with 5G. So we have 5G connectivity. We have pen input here. So as I mentioned to you guys, we have the bamboo pen here that it is supported and actually has native functionality into the system. It's not just a supported pen. This one also has functional options as well. We have an SD card support for expandable storage, stereo speakers with the top and bottom earpieces for true stereo speakers, wireless charging. We also have the ability of actually using a 3.5mm headphone jack, which is present all the way at the bottom, but it is an actual headphone jack. And again, a very large display, 5,000 milliampere battery. Here is 4,500, as opposed to what we get here on the Duo with the 3,577 amp. So between the three, realistically, this one has the smallest battery, although I feel like it actually manages battery life pretty good. Lastly, we're running Android 10.0, which is similar to what we have here, and as well as the Z Fold 2. None of these devices have been upgraded to Android, basically to Android 11 yet. But again, what it comes down to as far as functionality, and of course the powerhouse that we get here with the cameras and so on, which that's not part of the scope of this video, is the fact that I can actually take this phone and then we can go ahead and turn on the second screen, and now we have two displays, two functional displays, two displays that we can actually play video games on by using a gamepad on one side and play it on the other. That's another thing that we can definitely do here. With the Z Fold 2, it doesn't have that mode in gaming system. It pretty much just uses it as all the way full screen, or you have to use an external game controller. But This wasn't really the only reason why I wanted to share this. It's the ability of actually doing things like the way we did them on the Surface Duo. So I went ahead and opened up the same exact document, and of course we're able to open it in full screen mode. So let's go ahead and do here. And then with the supported functionality, you're able again to do the exact same situation. You're able to go into wide mode. Now again, we still have that seam in the middle, but if I open up the phone sideways and we get into an editing mode, we get a very similar experience. Although you notice it's not really formatted all the way. I'm using a wide mode to kind of mimic the same experience, but you still get a fully functional, a fully viewable side of the display to be able to see what you're editing, what you're typing. The keyboard doesn't necessarily take away 90% of the actual experience, which I feel like the Z Fold 2, although great because it gives us the functionality, takes away a lot of the real estate when we're using the keyboard, because again, it's using one display and stretching everything and trying to fit everything into one, where both of these devices are actually using a dual display to give us the best functional situation. When it comes down to multitasking and basically overall what is the best user experience for multitasking on any one of these devices, I'll have to say that you have to kind of look at it from a slightly different point of view. It's depending on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a device that has dual displays, by nature the Duo is going to be automatically the phone. From a standard of basically what it's offering us here, it's giving us two different devices connected together with a single landscape, basically more of a desktop experience in the background. Although we have that seam in the middle and obviously the phone kind of folds the other way and comes back, at the end of the day, you're working with one desktop and you're able to basically launch multiple applications. You're able to go in there and run full screen applications. You're able to use one display as a keyboard and the second display as the actual editing document section. For content consumption, pretty much the exact same thing. You can run multiple apps the same way. So for me, I feel like the Surface Duo really fits into that multitasking productivity niche very, very well. And of course, you can augment it with a keyboard, the obviously Surface Pen. Those things are sold separately, but you're able to augment the experience with the Surface Duo and make it even better. When we're looking at the V60 on its own, I feel like is a maverick of a device because it's a device that you can use on its own, just the V60 by itself, put it in a case and use it the way you normally use your smartphone. It has a large battery, of course, large display, stereo speakers, headphone jack, all the things that we normally want to get out of a flagship in 2020. 5G support with the 865, that's something also you want to keep in mind. The Duo does not have 5G, it has an 855 processor with 4G LTE. So I feel like the V60 kind of fits that maverick side, right? Because if you want a dual display, you jump in and put in a case on it, you have dual displays there. If you want pen input, you can pick up a bamboo pen and add all of that stuff to it. So overall, I feel like it kind of works between both sides as far as the Z Fold 2 and of course what we get with the Surface Duo. Now when we're talking about the Z Fold 2, we really need to start looking at it as what it truly is intended for. I feel like for media consumption, the Z Fold 2 is absolutely king. The fact that we have a large front-facing display and a larger internal display at 7.6 inches, you're getting a better experience there, but it truly is meant for stereo speakers and all of the things that you expect there. We have 5G, of course, and we have 256 gigs of internal storage right out the box. There's only I think one size for the US. Other markets may have a 512. But at the end of the day, using applications for multitasking kind of gets into a cramped situation. There's one thing to be said that yes, you can run 3 different, maybe 4 applications at the same time on the Z Fold 2, but how many of them are you actually paying attention to, and how many of them are you able to use to their full extent? That's a little bit of you have to kind of look at it in that sense. It's not the fact that you can run 4 apps, it's how many can you run in a good way and they're usable. So I feel like the way the Z Fold 2 does it, it's trying to fit more in the same space. And when you try to use it again in the same format for writing documents, I feel like it kind of falls a little bit. It's workable, it's definitely there, the display is large enough, but I feel like at that point I might want to just connect it to a monitor, connect it to maybe say a neck stock that I did a video on not that long ago, and basically get DeX out of it, because that's where it gets a little bit better. Between all 3 of these devices, Samsung has DeX, which works really nice. Again, there'll be a video in the description below to see how that works. Now, as far as LG, we do have the Android 10.0 desktop experience. It's not perfect, it's not great, but it does run an LG skin on it, and it works in a way to give us that ability of getting that bigger desktop experience. So if you're looking for something like that, I think the LG V60 is definitely nice. When it comes down to the Surface Duo, we get pretty much just a screen mirroring experience. There's no desktop experience yet. So for the most part, you just get the desktop. So if you connect it to a TV that's roughly 16 by 9, you're just going to get a full desktop. And when I use it on the Next Dock Touch, it literally gives me that entire experience. Pen input and touch sensitivity does work with the Next Dock, although there's some concerns. but at the end of the day, I feel like you're able to augment your experience with any one of these devices. My goal in this video is to showcase the strengths and the weaknesses when it comes down to multitasking for both the Z Fold 2 and the Surface Duo. The V60 was more introduced in there to kind of just show you guys that there are other options on the market when it comes down to foldables. It's a single device that can function as a dual display device and again give you guys a very similar experience. Although the Surface Duo's UI is entirely much better optimized to run the multitasking functionalities when it comes down to productivity, in my opinion. The Z Fold 2 is more so of a basically media consumption king. Everything that you want to be able to do for fun is going to work perfectly there. We have DeX, we have controller support, keyboard support, all of the things that you want to get there. But the V60 is definitely one of those things you kind of need to pay attention to in 2020 because I feel like LG knocked it out of the park with this device as a flagship that was released at the beginning of 2020 and still has a lot of horsepower at the end of 2020 to compete with some of the other options on the market. Like and subscribe as usual. Thank you very much for the support, and of course, I'll see you guys in the next video.